Very end of Kuf Beis, Amid Beis, the last word on the Amid or Mini. Just to review, the Gemara had mentioned that there's two psukim. You don't have to get too bogged down in it. There's two psukim, L'seichel nefesh and Basar, and Basar basada treifa L'seichelu. And the Gemara had a machlekes, which lavim are included in which. But everyone agrees that the Isser of Evim and Achai and treifa are not the same lav. That's universally accepted. It's a machlekes of basim and achai, but evim and achai and treifa are not the same lav universally. Okay. So it says the Gemara, or many have a contradiction. The basic contradiction is we're going to have a brisa that is it's challenging to understand Rish Lakish. And not a brisa, a teaching, a Maimer Chazal, which Rish Lakish is a little bit harder to understand. What is the Maimer Chazal? The Maimer Chazal says like this: Achal evim and achai min treifa. You eat an evim and achai, and the animal's a treifa. So you have an animal who's dying, and then you take off an aver while it's alive. So how many lashes do you get? So it's avim and achai and treifa. These are universally accepted as two separate lavim from two separate psukim. So how many lashes should you get? You should get two sets of lashes. Rav Yechanan Amar Chayav Shtayim. Rav Yechanan says you get two sets of lashes. Rav Yechanan is very, very understandable because avim and achai and treifa are two separate lavim. Comes Rish Lakish and he says, Ein chayiv ela achas. Rish Lakish says, no, you only get one. So the Pella is Rish Lakish. If the two separate lavim of Evim and Achai and Treifa are two separate lavim, why am I just getting one set of lashes? That is the shaila that we're going to be dealing with in the first Amid. Bishlam l'Rish Lakish kasha. According to Rish Lakish, they're two separate lavim, so why am I only getting one set of lashes? So the Gemara says, Amr Rav Yosef loy kasha. Kan behema achas, kan b'shtei behemis. Rav Yosef explains that there's a difference. If you have an aver min achai on one slice of on one plate from one animal, and a piece of treifa from a second plate, that's two lavim. But aver min achai that is a treifa is just one, even though they come from two separate psukim. One achila, one animal, that's one lav. We'll have to explain why. If the two animals, meaning one animal is an evim and achai, one animal is a treifa, you eat a kazayas of both, that's two separate lavim. Behema achas is pligi, but with one behema, Rish Lakish feels you only get one set of lashes. The question is why. Behema achas might pligi. So what is the machlekes? Meaning, why does Rish Lakish say one set of lashes and Rav Yechanan say two? That's the fundamental shaila. You have a case of a treifa and an evim and achai from one animal. Rabbi Yechanan says you get two sets of lashes, Rish Lakish says one. What is the fundamental shaila? So the Gemara is going to offer four explanations. It has to do with yesterday's sugya of Isser Chalal Isser. It's like a riddle. I have an Evim and a Chai and a Treifa. Do I get one set of lashes or two? So the Gemara says explanation number one. One other thing to remember, if you remember, the concept, let me just speak this out. Isser Chal Isser is when the two Issurim are not at the same time. So you have Isser A, and then Isser B is afterwards. It's a shaila of whether it's Chal. If they're both at the same time, then everyone agrees simultaneously you could have multiple Issurim being Chal at the same time. That's not a shaila. Here's the shaila. When does Evim and Achai take place? So you'll say, when the animal's born. That's when it's alive. If you remember yesterday, we had a machlokes. If I take an entire bird and pop it in my mouth while it's alive, it's a machlokes Rabbi and Rav Shimon Gamliel, are you over Evim and Achai or not? According to Gamliel, yes, which means a whole live animal is an Evim and Achai. Rabbi says no, which means according to Rabbi, when does the Isser Evim and Achai take place? Not when the animal's born, but when you pull off a limb. Because when the animal's born whole, it's not Evim and Achai yet. So that's important to remember. When you're trying to figure out the riddle of how many Isurim are there, and it has to do with Isser Chal Isser, it has to do with when are the Isurim Chal of Treifa and Evim and Achai, this shaila of when does Evim and Achai take place will become important. The Gemara speaks it out. Explanation number one of the machlokes. Rabbi. The case is, an animal can become a treifa at different times in its life. Treifa means that it's dying. It could become a treifa when it's 30 years old, or it could be born a treifa. It could be born with a birth defect that makes it a treifa, right? Yeah. So the case is, it was born a treifa. So as it's born, it's a treifa. The shaila is, when does Ever Min Achai take place? Meaning, they agree that Ein Isser Chalal Isser. The Machloikis Rav Yechanan and Rish Lakish is, when does Ever Min Achai take place? If Eiver Min HaChai takes place the moment it's born, because a whole animal is considered Eiver Min HaChai, that means that Treifa and Eiver Min HaChai are happening simultaneously. If you believe that Eiver Min HaChai only takes place, like Rabbi, not when it's born, but when you pull off a limb, that's later on. So it's first a Treifa, because it's born a Treifa, then Eiver Min HaChai is later on, Ein Isser Chalal Isser. Hence, there's only one set of lashes. It's born a treifa, so the first isser is a treifa. The question is, when does Eiver Min HaChai take place? If you believe a whole animal is Eiver Min HaChai, it means it's happening at the same time. As it's born, it's a treifa Eiver Min HaChai. So then two lavim are simultaneously. If you believe Eiver Min HaChai is chal afterwards, because you believe that Eiver Min HaChai is only a limb, so it's only chal when you pull off the limb, that means that it's first a treifa, then Eiver Min HaChai, ein isser chal al isser. That's the first explanation of the machlokas. Amar Rabbi gon shenisha from Yitzias Ruba. Marsa beim chayel levar mehem beiser treif beiser ever bahadi adadi kasi umarsa beim chayel lav levar memedes v'lo yasi iser ever chal al iser treifa. That's the first explanation of the machlokas. Explanation number 2. Iba yisema dekuli alma behem b'chayel lav levar memedes. Or much simpler, it's born a treifa. Yeah. Everyone agrees that Eiver Min HaChai only takes place when you pull off the limb, so it's later on. And the machlokas is whether the Isser of Eiver Min HaChai is Chal. Whether it's Isser Chal al Isser. Now this is not just a standard Isser Chal al Isser. The Eiver Min HaChai is more of an expansive Isser because it applies to Goyim. So it's an Isser Kolel. So really the Treifa comes first, then Eiver Min HaChai. And the machlokas is whether Isser of Eiver Min HaChai is Chal al Isser Treifa. And it has to do with Isser Kolel. Because the second Isser, normally Isser is not Chal al Isser, but Isser Eiver Min HaChai, which is more Kolel, it's a larger Isser, is it Chal? That's the Shaila. The Gemara says, Iba Yisem Dekuli Alma Behem Bechayel Lavle, Varma Medes. Uba Meisi Isser Eiver Mechala Isser Treifa Kamiflik. The Machlekes is whether the Isser of Eiver Min HaChai is Chal on an Isser Treifa. Mar Savar Asi Isser Eiver Achai al Isser Treifa, Mar Savar Lo Asi Isser Eiver Bechayel Isser Treifa, because it has to do with whether the Isser Eiver Min HaChai, which is an Isser Kolel, whether you say Isser Chal al Isser Isser Kolel. Or a third, much more simple explanation. And that is really, if you eat a whole animal alive, it's Eiver Min HaChai, which means the Isser Eiver Min HaChai is when it's born. But this case is that the animal became a treifa later on. So first is Eiver Min HaChai. Then 20 years later, the animal got injured, and now it's a treifa. And the machlekes is whether Isser Chal al Isser. If you say Isser Chal al Isser, that means the Isser of treifa is Chal. If you don't say Isser Chal al Isser, the Isser treifa is not Chal. So it's just a basic shaila of Isser Chal al Isser. The Gemara says, Iba Yisema, Dekuli Alma V'Heim Chayel Ivarma Medes, Kon Shenisha V'Lachem Ikan, the cases where the animal became treifa later on. So first Eiver Min HaChai, then treifa. Uba Meisi, Isser treifa, Chayel Isser Eiver Min HaChai, Kam Miflegi Masav, Asav V'Chayel, Masav Lo Asav V'Chayel. The machlekes is whether Isser Chal al Isser. Very basic. A fourth option, Rava Omar, the case is, Kigun Shetolash Mimenu Eiver V'Tarfa Boy. Okay. The case is very simple. You pulled off a limb to eat it, but by doing so, you made it a treifa. So you pulled off, a thigh bone. So at the same time that you pulled off the limb, you made it a treifa. What's the shaila? The shaila is an animal that's whole in Eiver Min HaChai. If the animal that's whole is in Eiver Min HaChai, that means it was already Eiver Min HaChai, then treifa came later, not chal. If you believe that a whole animal is not Eiver Min HaChai, then when does Eiver Min HaChai take place? When you pull it off. At that same moment, it became a treifa at the same time, so Isser Chal Isser. Okay, so it's just a slight different permutation. When does Eiver Those are the four explanations of this machlokes of whether you're over at the same time. So the shaila is, when does Eiver Min HaChai take place? If Eiver Min HaChai takes place when you pull off the limb, that means that at the moment you pull off the limb, it's Eiver Min HaChai and treif at the same time. So then it's chal. If you believe that a whole animal is an Eiver Min HaChai, it's already had Eiver Min HaChai. The Isser of Eiver Min HaChai was already chal. Then by pulling off the limb, you just have treifa, which is ein Isser Chal Isser.
So Eiver Min HaChai could apply if you don't shchita removes.
No, shchita removes Eiver Min HaChai. So the Gemara says, at least for Jews. So this has been four explanations for the machlokes of a treifa. If you ate an Eiver Min HaChai from a treifa, how many lashes do you get? Now the Gemara is going to do this again. But you ate an Eiver Min HaChai from a treifa, that's chaylev. So it's the same thing. So now just instead of treif and Eivim Menachai, it's treif and Menachai chaylev. So the question is, how many lashes do you get? Do you get 2 or 3? And it's, again, this same, just we're going to go through the similar permutations. Omer of Chia bar Rabba, Omer of Yochanan. Ochal chaylev min hachai min hatreifa. You ate chaylev from a living animal, that's a treifa. So it's Eivim Menachai, treifa, and chaylev. So it's 3. Chayiv shtayim. You only chayiv 2. 2 out of 3. Omer li Rav Ami, v'leim mer shalosh, ani omer shalosh. Rav Ami says, I think you're over 3. Eivim Menachai, chaylev, and treifa. So it's a machloikes, or you get 3 sets of lashes or 2. It's manami, Omer Avo, Omer Rav Yechon, Ochel chaylev min hachai, min hatreifa, chayiv shalosh. Now again, what is the machloikes? So we're going to offer 3 different explanations, and then we're going to get to Amid Beis, and Amid Beis is much simpler. 3 different explanations as to what is the machloikes. Are you get 2 sets of lashes or 3? So it's Eivim Menachai, treifa, and chaylev. So, b'mai kemiflagi, k'gan shenitzrafam yitzias ruba. Okay, the case is where the animal was born a treifa. Mandar Marshalish, the one who says 3, kasavar behem b'chayel evar momedes, the iser chaylev, the iser eche ever, the iser treifa, b'hadi adali kasi. Very simple. The one who says 3 says they're all happening at the same time. When does the iser treifa happen? When it's born. When does the iser evarim happen? When it's born, because he holds a whole animal as Eivim Menachai. And when does the iser chaylev happen? When it's born. All 3 are happening the second it's born. So all 3 are chal. That's the opinion of all 3. Mandam Rishtayim, the one who says you're only over 2 lashes, 1 is out. Which one? Because it's very simple. It's born as a treifa, so treifa is chal when it's born. Chaylev is chal when it's born, but he believes that Eivim Menachai is only chal when you pull off the limb later on. Ein iser chal al iser. So you got 2 out of 3 when it's born, but the third one's not chal. Mandam Rishtayim kasaver behem b'chayel lav levar momedes v'iser chaylev v'iser treifa ikar is ever lo yasi v'chayel. That's the first explanation. The second explanation, Iba Yisema, to kuli alma behem b'chayel lav levar momedes. Ubemesi iser aver v'chayil iser chaylev iser treifa kamiflagi marsavar asi chayil marsavar lo asi chayil. The second answer is very, very similar to the first. It's born a treifa and it's born with chaylev, so those 2 are chal right when it's born. But aver and chayil is later on when you pull off the limb. The machlokes is whether you say iser chal al iser. Do you say iser chal iser by Eivim Menachai? If you say iser chal al iser by Eivim Menachai because it's in iser kol, then you'll have all 3. But if not, you only have 2. You have to tell them, they just came in, you have to tell them to break down the whole thing on the downstairs. Okay, after davening. After daf. Third explanation, and final explanation of this Amid, Iba Yisema, Dekuli Alma Behema Chayeha Levar Momedes. Really, an animal when it's born is Eivim Menachai right away. The case is where it became treifa later on. So it's born, so think about it. It's born with chaylev right away. It's born with Eivim Menachai right away. So those 2 are done. The shaila is treifa. Here's the shaila. Is the isser of treifa chal later on? So you'll say, why would it be chal? I thought in isser chal isser. Because every single time you have chaylev, right, what do you have over here? You have the 2 isurim. You have Eivim Menachai and chaylev. And then the shaila is whether treifa is chal later on. The halacha is, every chaylev, okay, you have an animal that's a treifa. Forget about Eivim Menachai. You have an animal that's a treifa. And you eat the chaylev. You get 2 lashes. Why? It's a special chiddush that when the animal has chaylev and then it becomes a treifa, it's chal, automatic. The shaila is, so I know treifa is chal on chaylev. The shaila is treifa chal on chaylev and Eivim Menachai. That's the shaila. So treifa is the exception to iser chal iser because it's chal on chaylev. Every time an animal has chaylev and then it becomes a treifa, it now has 2 isurim on the chaylev and treifa. The shaila is, I know treifa is chal on chaylev, is treifa also chal on Eivim Menachai? That's the fundamental shaila. B'meisi iser treifa meichal al iser aver kamiflagi. The machlokes is whether iser treifa is chal on the iser of Eivim Menachai in addition to chaylev. Mar savar asi chayil midhava chaylev. The one opinion says yes, because treifa is chal on the chaylev, the iser treifa is chal on the Eivim Menachai. The Amr Mar, how do I know that the iser treifa is chal on chaylev? Atayra Amra Yava iser nevela v'yachal iser chaylev Yava iser treifa yachal iser chaylev. The Brisa says mefurish that the iser of treifa is chal on the iser chaylev. So, if it's chal on the iser chaylev, it's chal on the iser aver and chaylev. Ve'idach a chaylev hu dechayil. The other opinion says no. The iser treifa is chal on chaylev, but not on Eivim Menachai. Why not? I'll tell you why. Out of the 2, which is the weaker iser? Chaylev Why is chaylev weaker than Evim and Achai? Because they're animals you could eat the chaylev from. You could take a deer and eat its chaylev. So that says the chaylev is not so stark. So because chaylev is not so stark, the iser treifa is chal. But on Evim and Achai, where there is no heter, treifa is not chal. So the machlokes is whether the iser of treifa is chal later on the iser of chaylev and Evim and Achai. One says yes, vidach. Achaylev udachai el dehutik on the next page. Michlolei aval chayevet lehut michlolei loy. So that's the fundamental shaila. Okay, I'm done with that little riddles. Now just smooth sailing to the end of the daf. Here's the deal. You have to eat a kazayis of Evim and Achai. And again, Evim and Achai has flesh, sinews, and bones. Okay. Now, one quick point. Normally, when you have to eat a kazayis, you don't have to put the entire kazayis in your mouth at once. Kedei achilas pras, right? Chazer, right? If you have to eat a kazayis of chazer to get lashes, and I eat a kazayis within 30 seconds, I'm going to get lashes. I didn't put the whole kazayis in my mouth. It's kedei achilas pras. The shaila is Evim and Achai the same way? So you say, why not? So the Gemara says, Kiyaser of Dimi Amar, Boi Minei Rish Lakish Rav Yechon. Rish Lakish asked Rav Yechon, Chilku mibachutz. What if you take the Evim and Achai, you cut it in half, and then you eat it in two pieces? Right away, you eat it in two pieces. Mahu, what's the halacha? Amalei Potter. He says Potter. In other words, Evim and Achai is unlike other Isurim. It's not enough to eat it b'echilas pras. You have to put the entire kazayis in your mouth. Now, why is this? So Rashi says, I'll tell you why. Because Evim and Achai is unique. What makes Evim and Achai unique? You're eating bone. Normally, bone is not aser deraisa, but over here you're eating bone. So because it's already unique, therefore it has to be the entire kazayis in your mouth. Okay. So you have to put the entire kazayis in your mouth to be over Evim and Achai. Here's the shaila. Do you have to swallow it whole? What if I chew it? Technically, the whole thing is in my mouth, but the whole thing is not being swallowed at once. So that's the Gemara Shaila. Mibifnei mahu. What if I chew it while it's in my mouth? So the whole thing is in my mouth, but it's not being swallowed at once. Amar le chayiv. He says chayiv, meaning, because Rav Yechanan shita is that while you have to, it's called hanas goron, not hanas mayav, which means it's not necessary that the stomach gets it all at once. It's necessary that the throat gets the benefit of the kazayis. So as long as you put it in your mouth at once, you could chew it up and swallow it in different swallows. Okay. Kiyasa Rav and Amar, Chilkim Mechutz Potter, Mibifnim, he asked the same shaila, what about chewing it? So you have to put the entire kazayis in your mouth, but you're chewing it and eating it in different bites. Rav Yechon Amar Chayiv, Rav Yechon says Yechayim because you put the whole thing in your mouth. Rish Lakish Amar Potter. Rish Lakish Taka says Potter. Meaning according to Rish Lakish, you have to swallow it whole. You have to take the entire kazayis and just go. Oh. So the Gemara speaks it out. Rav Yechon says Yechayiv, Harei nena groina b'kazayis. You put the entire thing in your mouth at once. Your mouth benefited from a kazayis at once. That's enough. Rish Lakish Amar Potter. Achila b'maya b'inan v'leka. Rish Lakish says no. Your stomach has to get a kazayis at once. So the Gemara points out the shaila. How do you do this? If you were to try to take a kazayis of meat and swallow it whole, you'll probably choke. So the Gemara says, how do you do this? Ela Rish Lakish hechi mashkechas l'temechayiv. The answer is Amrav Kahana begarmisa zeirta, by swallowing a small bone. In other words, because it's a bone, the case is where it's most bone and a little bit of meat. So bone, you can just slide down your gullet. You don't have to chew it. There's no chewing it. So it's like a thin, long bone, and you're just like a sword swallower. Look, that's it. Okay, Rav Elazar says, I disagree with all of this. This whole thing that you have to put the whole kazayis in your mouth, nope. Rav Elazar says, Afilu chilkim b'b'chutz nami chayiv. No, Rav Elazar says, Evim and Achai is like chazer. You don't have to put the entire kazayis in your mouth at once. Eat it within, b'chadei kilas pras is enough. Why? Mechuser krevel, av mechuser maisa dami. It's not mechuser maisa, just eating it in the normal way of eating is chayiv. So Rav Elazar disagrees with the entire premise. Okay. Now, we said before that according to Rav Yochanan, the ikr is the mouth. The ikr is the mouth to get benefit. You have to put a kazayis in your mouth. So it says the Gemara, Amrish Lakish, Kazayis Amru, Chutz Mishal Ben Hashinayim. What if I put the kazayis in my mouth and I eat it, but there's a little bit in between my teeth, and the little bit that's in between my teeth is now no longer kazayis. So it says the Gemara, you're still chayiv. Why? Because Rav Yochanan believes, Rish Lakish believes that the ikr is in the mouth, and therefore your mouth got a kazayas. Not all of it went down to the stomach. Okay, it's enough. Rav Yochanan says no more. Chutz mebein shenishayim. I'm sorry. Rish Lakish said no. We do if the what's stuck in between the teeth didn't go down, it doesn't count. Rav Yochanan says no. Af bein shenishayim. Rav Yochanan says no. The in between the teeth counts. Meaning, Rav Yochanan says a full kazayas didn't go to my stomach, but a full kazayas went to my mouth, and the mouth is the ikr. Now the Gemara has one clarification. Rav Papa disagrees. In Rav Yochanan, Rav Papa clarifies when we say according to Rav Yochanan that you have to get the hana of your mouth. What part of your mouth? So the Gemara understands it's the front part, even the front part, where your teeth are. So even if some of the meat is in between your teeth, that still counts. Rav Papa disagrees. He says, no, that's not what Rav Yochanan said. The mouth, to have benefit, to have a kazayas in your mouth, to have a benefit, is not the front of your teeth. Because the front of the teeth is not really considered the mouth. It's rather, you ever notice, people can get it. I get it sometimes. There's, by the tonsils, you could have pockets where you can get a little bit of food stuck by the palate, the back. That's what Rav Yochanan was referring to. Meaning Rav Yochanan says the kazayas has to be in your mouth. It's not the front of your mouth, it's the back of your mouth. So if there's meat in between your teeth, that doesn't count. But if there's meat stuck in the back of the throat, that counts. Meaning, so if you have meat in between your teeth, that doesn't count as part of the kazayas. But the throat, back of the throat does. Rav Papa Amar, B'shal bein hashinayim d'chuli ama pligi, ki pligi bein ha'chenichayim. Chenichayim is by the palate, by the tonsils. Mar savar haninen groiner b'kazayis, mar savar achila b'inem v'leka. Okay, one last sugya. Amar Rav Asi, Amar Rav Yochanan. Rav Asi said in the name of Rav Yochanan, Ochel chatzi zayis, if you ate a half of a kazayis, v'hikia, and then you threw it up, v'chazer ochel chatzi zayis acher, and then you ate a different half of a kazayis. So I ate a full kazayas, but I didn't have it in my stomach all at once. So I ate half a kazayas A, threw it up, then I ate half a kazayas B. So the halacha is chayiv, even though a full kazayas didn't end up going to my stomach at once, because I threw up the first half, but at the end of the day, I ate a full kazayas. My taima, hareinena grona, because again, according to Rav Yochanan, the ikr is the throat, and the throat got a kazayas. Says the Gemara, Rav Elazar Rav Asi. Rav Elazar asked Rav Asi the following question. So we just got finished saying, understand the case, because we're finishing up, I just want to get the cases down. You ate half a kazayas A, then threw it up, then ate half a kazayas B. That was what Rav Asi said you're chayiv. Rav Elazar then asked Rav Asi the following question. Ochel chatzi zayis v'hikia, you ate half a kazayas A and threw it up, v'chazer v'achle, and then you ate the throw up. So you ate, no, the first case is you ate half a kazayas A, threw it up, then you ate half a kazayas B. Huh? Correct. So the first case is where you, understand the case. First case is there's two half a kazasim in front of you, two plates. You ate A and threw it up, and then ate B. The second shaila was, I ate half a kazayas A, threw it up, and then I re-ate it. So the question is, so what's the difference? This sounds like the shaila is when you throw something up, is it no longer considered food? So says the Gemara, why are you asking this case? It must be that you're asking, is a fundamental shaila, if you throw something up, is it no longer considered food? So let me ask you a question. So why do you have to have a half a kazayas case? I'll give you a much simpler case. You ate a kazayas, and you get lashes, then you throw it up, and then you ate the full kazayas again. Do you get a second set of lashes? Why do you have, meaning if you're just trying to figure out whether throw up is considered food, meaning was it digested, then why do you have to have this case of a half and a half? Just much simple. You ate a kazayas, threw it up, and then ate it again. So says the Gemara, v'tiboyle kazayas. So says the Gemara, it must be, the reason why you're asking this is ela ibasar grono asal, ibasar mayav asal. Maybe you're asking half of a kazayas and half of a kazayas because you're really asking, do you go by the stomach or do you go by the throat? Meaning, you ate half, threw it up, and then ate the throw up again. Maybe you're asking that because you're really asking because the person didn't get the stomach didn't get a whole kazayas because it was a half at a time. But then you're going back to the original shaila we had, which is it the throat or the stomach? So it says the Gemara, Tif Shalei Mid Ravasi. We already know that from Ravasi. In other words, why are you asking this? Why did Rav Elazar ask Ravasi this case specifically? So the Gemara says, meaning in other words, this Shaila, L'cha'ora, if you have all the information up to this point, you know the answer to this. You know the answer that it's, the Gemara said basically, you could figure out all the information up to this point. So why are you asking this specific permutation of it? So the Gemara says, I'll tell you why. Rav Asi quoted Rav Yochanan in the case of the throwing up. He had forgotten what he had originally taught. Rav Asi had originally taught it differently. When Rav Elazar asked Rav Asi, what about the case of throwing up and eating the original A? The reason why he asked that was not just to get information. He was trying to remind Rav Asi of what he had taught him. Meaning, Rav Asi originally taught the case was you ate A, half a kazayas, threw it up, and then ate it again. That was what he originally taught. And the beauty of that teaching is that it teaches you multiple things. It teaches you that throw up is still considered food. It teaches you that even if you eat them in different stages, it's considered an achila because the ikar is the mouth. It teaches you multiple things. That was what Rav Asi originally taught. Then Rav Asi had forgot his learning, or he forgot that he had taught that. When he came into Shir, he taught the case was you ate A, threw it up, and then you ate B. To that, Rav Elazar is asking, what about the original case? Not to ask a shaila. He's trying to remind Rav Asi of what he had originally taught. So the Gemara says, Rav Asi gomre yakirle. Rav Asi had forgotten what he had originally taught. Rav Elazar is trying to remind him. When Rav Elazar asked this question, it was not just like a student asking a question. He knew the answer. He was trying to remind Rav Asi of what he had originally taught. And this is what happened. So Rav Elazar said to Rav Asi, why not teach the case where you threw up A and then re-ate it? Why? The ikal masha entirety, because that teaches you two things. It teaches you shamid have ikal. It teaches you that vomited food is still considered food. And it teaches you that the ikar is the mouth, not the stomach. So why are you teaching where you ate A, threw it up, then ate B? Why not just say you ate A, threw it up, and ate A again? So Rav Asi hears this. Rav Asi doesn't remember that he forgot this. So Rav Asi says, it's a good shaila, I don't know. So Rav Asi ishtik, Rav Asi couldn't answer. To that, Rav Elazar then told Rav Asi, Amalei Moifis Hadar, miracle of the generation, meaning, Gadol Hadar, Loi Zin and Sagin Amar Kamid Rav Yochanan, you taught us this in the name of Rav Yochanan, Amar Loch, Hareinena Groine B'Kazayas. Meaning, in other words, I'm not just asking you a question, I'm trying to remind you in a very respectful way of what you had originally taught us, which was you ate A, threw it up, and then ate A again, and you're considered Oiver, Eva Menachai, Hadran Allah, Gid Ha Nasha. All right, we'll stop here. Hold on, what's just